wait a minute, who's managing this? What are we walking into? What is this about? Etc. And it didn't last very long, but it was enough for that whole question to sink into people's psyche, and then that came up later. But in August, it looked like cryptos went up again, and I thought, okay. But there was the attitude. The reason it went up was people's attitude was sort of like damn it, this is our world, this is my money, this is my government, this is my nation, this is my, and we're running it the way we want. And we're not having anything to do with you, cabal. And so there was this attitude of, I'm investing in more cryptos because, damn it, I want to. Because I want to have charge of this. So then there's some more that came up with the cabal right after that. I thought, okay. The undercurrent of danger that I saw in September was that a lot of cash had disappeared. It was off the table. It was all in cryptos. And I thought, oh wow, let's see where this goes. If we don't have any cash and they crash the crypto market, we're up the creek without a paddle. Schitt's Creek, as my mother would call them. No.
That's a good episode on CBC. There's a good, there's a show called Schitt's Creek.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Okay, so then I thought, let me look at the cabal and let me see what's actually happening there with them. And I was really surprised. Okay, so the cryptos were the devil child of the cabal. That they set that up, they started it, they did all the the background stuff to make it seem like there was something happening that was out of their control, and it wasn't. And they planned to have total control over the people, and the plan was not going well. And so I looked at that, I thought, oh my, the cabal was in this kind of they were struggling because what they saw was that cryptos were being taken over by the very people that they were originally wanted to control, and instead those people were controlling the crypto. And they were just so distressed over that. They were freaking out, absolutely freaking out, and they were blaming various people within the cabal families, and they were getting some vengeance too, I would add. And they were, but everybody was using the same excuse. Well, it's not working because we had to speed up our plan. We didn't have enough time to carry out our 16-year plan. We needed another 8 years, and they don't have it. And so, and so they do not think that they can pull it off. And that was a big shock for me. And so at the same time that I was looking at this, I'm watching the drivers moving the population forward, and the attitude of most people was, what is decentralized crypto and what is centralized crypto? And they were only interested in the decentralized crypto. The centralized was controlled by the banks, and the banks were going all out trying to get people to invest in their cryptos, turn their money in for those cryptos. And so there was this absolutely frantic craziness happening between, say, August, September, October, and the cabal. They had a second thing that they were afraid of, and it was that people were waking up and realizing that the cabal was working through the big corporations, and people were beginning to boycott corporations.
Kenny Kelly.
And various organizations, and and it was just not going well for the cabal at all. And so, they were afraid more people were going to figure out other ways that would hurt them financially. And people were figuring out other ways. And so there was this big propaganda campaign. Look, we can do cryptos and it's so easy and smooth. Just get out your Google Pay or get out your, some other crypto, and Visa or Master. It's just like using Visa or MasterCard. We got it handled, folks. And so I was like, oh, wow. So that was the cabal. They really, they're trying to get, the last thing I saw was that they were trying to get that infrastructure bill passed. And it hadn't passed, I don't think, at the time that I first started looking. But most of that was money for them. It was nothing to do with infrastructure. They have no intention of improving our infrastructure. So it was like, oh my gosh. So that was the crypto cabal struggle and conundrum that's happening between now and October. So let's go back to the IRS question.
Hold on, I wrote a note, I won't forget it. Let's go back to the crypto here for a second. I love this because you and I have talked about this, I think it was in the November or maybe December show, where we would eventually have this war to waking up humanity to the difference between the centralized and the decentralized coin, the central bank and digital currency. And we had opined that, of course, these banks would come out, and now they're all out, say, hey, trust us, we're safe, we're the custodians of your Litecoin, use our Visa card, blah, blah, blah. And unknowing people who are not yet into crypto would say, oh, okay, that's the news, I might trust the banks, whatever. So my question is to you then, and I always ask, what's going to be that instigator event where people educate themselves between the two and are not fooled by that? So what happens? Why do people start paying attention between the centralized and decentralized coin, and why does the train go off the track here for the cabal trying to bring people into their new version of fiat money into the digital currency world?
Right. You know what? It's just this slow creeping move. There was no big incidents. There were news out here and there, but it was just this slow thing. And the cabal kept looking for who's to blame, how's this happening? They couldn't find one.
Right.
And I thought, there's no way they're going to stop that. People are sharing, they're telling, they're talking, they're understanding. There's too many people that are too awake, and they're just, they just don't have a leg to stand on. And the infrastructure bill, the other thing something goes wrong with the infrastructure bill. I don't know what happens. It looks like it doesn't ever happen. So I'm watching to see what happens with that. But I was delighted to see that it just was this slow creeping knowledge, passed individual to individual, and no amount of censorship and no amount of demonetizing stops that. They can't stop it.
Actually, it probably makes it worse, right? When people
don't want to hear about some of the injectable stuff, and they don't want it. They're tired, out of their mind about the corona thing, but they're interested
in there.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's good news because, again, I've had these conversations with Dick Allgaier and Bix Weir, and both of those guys had a very different view. Bix was more of the white hats, good side, crypto. Yeah, I don't know, it's the cabal, they have a lot of control, and they might actually go to more control. And so I was kind of like between them. I agree the cabal wants to have more control, and I can see that's what their plan is, but I always thought that at some through all of this chaos, humans would say, aha, got you, and turn the tables. And of course, maybe that was optimistic of me, but you see, it appears that your look-see here is and I'm happy for the folks who are out there too, who are looking at all of this, and hard choices to go maybe against what their family was saying, their friends were saying, and put money into crypto. And now they see maybe at least light at the end of the tunnel, and some benefit being from the scene. You always get that first you guys who are already there here in crypto and gold and silver. We'll get into the gold and silver in a second here. Okay, thank you so much for Michael, Shauna, Eugenia, love that name, Ilcha, thank you so much, and Belkis, did we do that one? Yes. Now, let's go back to that IRS. What's happening with those guys?
Okay, so, yeah, I just saw this week. Some people this year, but by the time I got to next year, there was, the majority did not file. And it was that same kind of creeping sort of, they're not federal government. Why are we chunk was, we don't like what you're doing. We're not giving you our money for you to do that with it. And so people, I have thought, even though people would not file their taxes, the way that's ever going to happen this week was, yes, there is, it's coming. And what starts this...
There's talking about it at lunch. One of the advantages of coming to New Jersey for all those that are online, stuff at lunch. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in a lawyer. No, I'm in a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to have no idea they're slaves, and there's the people who really know for sure. Are you who you think you are? Do you know everything is an illusion? That is basic rights and freedoms. How can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country drinking, tax evading rebels who lit their beds at night to shoot us. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, then I don't trust you. It's not reason, it's not eloquence, it's force. Like fire, it's a dangerous tool, and inform the whole mass of the people. They're the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. People are well informed. Is at the heart of a dynamic democracy. And that's the same one that was on there a minute ago. So I guess I'll just delete that one. Once the people become inattentive to Congress and assemblies, judges, seems to be the law of our general nature in spite of, no. Anyways, I don't know if the guys online. Still buffering. Yeah. Well, I think it's caught up. Huh?
How come this is handwritten most of it? You don't type that in? Or?
No, I could. Handwriting is actually common law. I mean, that's in the old days how they would do it, right? So I do handwrite, like especially the bar grievance complaints. I handwrite, and that one is.
I should handwrite mine, right?
This is a Texas one, so you cannot get the PDF, the form that you fill out PDF. You just print out the form and you have to handwrite it. I could actually type it up as text, and I could actually even, I might have to try it a couple times, but I could probably line the text up on the lines on that page. But I figured handwriting it is actually, although sometimes my chicken scratch hard to read, but But if you look at this one, well, this one's handwritten too. But there's actually some of them give you PDF forms that you can fill out, and so then I would just go ahead and type it in. But these ones are all have to be handwritten, so I handwrite them, and then I attach the criminal complaint. Okay, it's caught up now. Yeah, so they're saying that the signal's good. Thanks for letting me know, you guys. Slick dissident, appreciate it. Okay, so under international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during the war in his own name. And a mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. And so it's all warfare. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us, that's dictatorship. So, and that's taken from the causes and necessities for taking up arms. This is, it keeps happening again and again. This is 1775, and it's happening now too. The law of war can no more wholly dispense with retaliation than can the law of nations, of which it is a branch. So again, the law of war is part of international law, or the law of nations. The law of nations and international law are interchangeable phrases. Libre Code, Article 12. Law of nations is international law. Banks all fall under international law. Military dictatorship is under international law. Uniform Commercial Code is international law. And all codes, rules, and regulations are international law. UNIDROIT, which governs the Uniform Commercial Code. This is from their website. It covers negotiable instruments. Gee, that sounds like Bank of Canada notes and Federal Reserve notes. Civil procedure, civil liability, that sounds like civil courts. Secured transactions, gee, that sounds like a mortgage. Legal status of women, maintenance obligations, contracts in general, banking law, again that goes to negotiable instruments. Transportation, that's like airlines. Department of Transportation, commercial carrying passengers or property for hire. Leasing, franchising, hotels, insurance. And then they make it mandatory. Anything relating to, that's misspelt there, anything related to marriage, divorce, children, municipal law. And that's all. Remember, there's that law dictionary definition that says Roman law, civil law, and Roman civil law are convertible phrases and mean municipal law. Well, it'll probably be in this presentation. UNIDROIT controls and governs the Uniform Commercial Code. The Uniform Commercial Code is private international law. It says right on their website. Uniform Commercial Code is, if you read the UNIDROIT website, it says that they make the change and it automatically, this comes at the UN, it's like 100 yards from the Holy See in Rome. They make a change and it just automatically flows down to all the states. Canada and the United States are signatories to the UNIDROIT statute. As of this date, 63 countries have signed on to the UNIDROIT statute. But a republic is not law of nations. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. That's U.S. Supreme Court. So you think about it. We the people, as found in the preamble to the Constitution, is not U.S. citizens. Matter of fact, we the people, at the time the Constitution is written, was state citizens, citizens of Virginia or citizens of North Carolina, that had delegated certain power to delegates that wrote the federal Constitution. So we, the people that they're talking about there, is state citizens. It's not U.S. citizens. And so then, if you think about it, you have the state citizens and the states, and then the federal government. There's been delegated certain power. The federal government's supposed to basically insulate we the people from international law. Here's that case I was talking about, or it's a law dictionary definition. Civil law, Roman law, and Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. So, civil law, Roman civil law, and municipal law are all convertible phrases. And municipal law is governed by unidroit. And there's a Roman law maxim that says, let he who is willing to be deceived be deceived. So they lie, they cheat, they steal, they'll sit up there, that so-called judge up there. That's why I say there's no courts. And that's why I say file bar grievances against them.
Question, what's the difference between municipal law and territorial law?
I don't know.
Like you said Roman civil law, and the other one were convertible phrases.
Right.
So whether they come at us through the municipal law or through the territorial jurisdiction, what is the difference?
Well, I think that the municipal law is in the territorial jurisdiction. Now, if you read that non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett, right? He says, he talks about municipal laws and stretch far beyond their ancient limits. You see what I'm saying? And so it comes down to, I think, the way you have to look at it is the Clearfield Doctrine again. Okay? If municipal law would be very different than it is now. You see what I'm saying? And because of the fake money, you're brought into international law, and so then municipal law in that case, at least, of course, according to Black's Law Dictionary, that municipal law, Roman civil law are all convertible phrases. If we had lawful money, then I'm not sure. I think that basically the judges, everything would change, and we'd have a completely different kind of government.
And the courts, if in fact are getting 5 to 10 times whatever the fine is, or the ticket, or the charge, like I think that's a piece to the puzzle that they could maybe not do either if you do only.
Well, are they only getting that amount?
I don't know what they're getting.
Well, according to, if you go to when the 2008, collapse happened, they had the president, the CEO of Lehman Brothers before Congress, and I remember him saying, or Congress was telling him, that they had leveraged their assets by 30 times. So why on earth don't you think that maybe the courts are doing the same thing?
So how would I find that out?
You'd have to probably do a forensic audit of their books. That would be the only way that I could say that you would be able to find out and to get access to them.
Who sanctions their operation? The legislature, the Constitution, in New Jersey, for example.
I don't know. I mean, it's a municipal corporation, so it's a corporation. But I know in Texas, municipal cities are considered political subdivisions of the state.
Yes, and I heard that the municipal courts must send their tickets, etc., original signatures, whatever, to the county to collect.
That's possible. Maybe it's coming. But again, that's corporation. It's all corporate.
Is that county municipal or is it territorial?
I think they're all municipal corporations. They all fall under, I don't see, I think it's territorial, but it's not territorial law. I've never heard of territorial law. I've heard of territorial jurisdiction, but not territorial law.
Okay.
And so then municipal law, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because territorial
Jurisdiction
is,
falls under municipal law.
gotcha, municipal law,
Yeah.
territorial jurisdiction, so there's no municipal jurisdiction, well, there is, but it's a
It's a
subset.
territorial jurisdiction is what it is.
Okay.
But, here's the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure. Civil procedure is Roman law. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, and I guarantee you they have a New Jersey Rules of Civil Procedure. There's the table of contents. That's for bar members, exactly. Roman laws everywhere. All mortgages fall under Roman law. Negotiable instrument law, Federal Reserve notes, that's even found in the Uniform Commercial Code, subset of Roman law. Bar members write all mortgage contracts. Bar members have decided every detail involving Roman law in America. I've got a set of books that's in storage. It's a 3-volume set, and it's entitled Roman Law in America. Have bar members told you the nature of the mortgages or negotiable instruments? Of course they're not going to tell you. And they make all this little tiny fine print. They don't want you reading that thing. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. So if you are subject to rules and regulations, you are territory and property or property of the United States. And that's not unique to the United States. It's in Canada, it's in every country. This is a Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. Owned means subject to the regulations. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agent of the bitch. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. Oh, look at that, a kangaroo court. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. And really, at the end of the day, when we start reading some of these court cases I'm going to get into, the real enemy is this prosecutor. That's where it's coming from, the bar member. Every time, it's the bar member. File grievances against his butt, and you'll be surprised at what happens. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. Everything they do is a fraud, a fine, okay? If they're fining you, then they're forcing you to work for the government for nothing. You have to work for nothing to get that fake money to pay them. And it's always, that's right, 13th Amendment. It's always Federal Reserve notes. And so there again, anybody that's working for Federal Reserve notes is essentially a slave, because you're not getting paid anything. That's when I sued the IRS and took them to the Supreme Court. That's why another reason to have lawful money. I mean, when the normies, like Cliff High calls them, get wind of this, the price of silver is going to go through the roof. And so if you have it before, you're going to make out okay. When I sued the Supreme Court over the IRS, I sued the IRS and took it to the Supreme Court. That was what I said, is this is slavery. Where's the contract? And the IRS didn't respond. The Supreme Court, what happened is I told them that when it came to the Supreme Court, there's a filing fee, and they said right in the rules, it says we don't have to accept any case, and so I went and did a motion to proceed without the extortion, and I told them you have no right to tax me because I'm one of the people, and you don't have any right to turn this case away because I'm one of the people. Every case, I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, I've done it the same way every time. Every case, they accepted the case and there's no fees. And every case, the Department of so-called Justice waives their right to respond. In other words, they say, okay, so what? We know about that. And when they waive their right to respond, if you know anything about the courts, if they don't dispute anything that's in there, it's admitted. And so when they waive their right to respond, then the Supreme Court, what that does is it takes away the controversy. The Constitution says there has to be a controversy. And so it takes away the controversy, there's nothing to rule on, they dismiss the case. Every time. 5 times I've been to the Supreme Court, 5 times it happened the same way. In the first one, I told them this is slavery, and ultimately, it's all the same arguments that I put in the affidavit and petition to proceed without the extortion. Matter of fact, I didn't call it originally. I called it without the prepayment of taxes, but now I just call it the extortion, and either way, it always comes out the same way. And so now what I do is I was recently in the Fifth Circuit, Fifth Court of Appeals, and I just sent them the Form 1020. Right off the bat, first thing I do is send them the 1020, and I give them 15 days, and they say they can't go to do something in 30 days, they're going to dismiss the case. Well, I send them the 1020, 15 days later, I send them the notice of default and opportunity to cure, and so by the time the 30 days is coming up, it's probably past the 30 days, and I sent them the notice of default, and so they never dismissed it. They said they accepted the case. And it proceeded, and that was using the Form 1020 in Fifth Circuit, the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, and I did the Form 1020, and it worked. Yeah. Anyways, so but I also sent them an affidavit too, by the way, but it's the same affidavit I've used, and in the past, sometimes they accept it and sometimes they don't. Again, I'm going to start filing again once you understand what's happening, and once the next one's going to be on, and it'll be first thing tomorrow morning. It'll be on District of Columbia courts, and they're all DC courts. There are no courts, okay? They're all bar members, and so they go and pick a bar member to be a judge, okay? That doesn't mean he's an Article 3 judge. Matter of fact, I would say they're not. And so, in fact, if you read the Constitution, I'd have to get it out, but the federal judge's oath of office is not constitutional for the federal judges, but they're all bar members. So they did take the constitutional oath of office as a bar member, but they've not taken it as a judge. And so they still have an oath of office as a bar member, and so that's one of the things I mentioned when I'm dealing with them. Anyways, and I just rail on them, okay? Because they're bar members, they're foreign agents of the Roman cult. There's no courts. There's really no Article 3 courts, and that's what we'll talk about tomorrow. That's why you bar grieve the lawyers, you bar grieve the judges, you bar grieve them all. And the Supreme Court is who regulates the bar, and so those are the ones that you go after. Even in New Jersey, okay? There's a U.S. District Court for New Jersey. There's probably, I don't know, is there a northern, western, eastern, just one?
I think there's 2.
2?
Yeah, there's one in Camden and one in Newark.
Yeah.
So that's what, north and south, or east and west? Anyways,
North and south.
North and south?
I think so.
So the New Jersey State Bar is who you file a bar grievance against the judges in the U.S. District Court, because they're part of the New Jersey Bar, guaranteed. And a lot of these bars, you can go to their website and you can actually look up who's the bar members. There's a lot of times what I found is, and this is kind of stealing my thunder for tomorrow, but when I file, I want to get their bar number if I can, okay? Because then I know that I got the right guy, because there could be a couple guys with similar names or something. Yes?
New Jersey has the all caps name available of every attorney, including if they're retired or?
Yeah, good. So then you can
Yeah,
search.
they have the bar number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Addresses, everything. It's like a license.
right.
I'll tell you later.
So,
No,
so
it's easy to find.
anyways, that's good. I was looking on New Jersey and I couldn't find it, so I'll be wanting that too. But so the point is that even judges are just bar members who were given that job, and they're not a real judge. Okay, there's no Article 3 courts. Bar members cannot be an Article 3 judge. Remember the 13th Amendment. It still exists, okay? And so bar members cannot be an Article 3 judge. And so that's why you just bar grieve the judge too. Bar grieve them all. U.S. attorney, there's two of them there's for a U.S. attorney and an assistant U.S. attorney in Texas. And I went and filed a lawsuit against FedEx. FedEx removed it into federal court, and then federal court dismissed it. That's against the lawyer, two lawyers that were involved in FedEx, and the chief counsel for FedEx. And so invite them all, you know. And the other one there, the third-party debt collector. That's a big third-party debt collector in Texas. They have it's Linebarger, Golden, Blair, and Sampson. And they have offices in San Antonio. They got them in Fort Worth. They got them all over the place. And so it's and I don't know how many. They must have different partners. I don't know, but I know that in San Antonio they had like 9 partners. Matter of fact, I went to their website. Here's the website. San Antonio, and they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 partners. So I filed bar grievances against them all. And if you read this, and we'll go through this stuff tomorrow, but it's multiple felonies. And so they say, Randy Kelly said that if a law firm gets three bar grievances, that they have to set up under a new name. So that'll get their attention, I'm sure, if they have to go to that much trouble. And anyways, we'll see. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. Everything is a fraud and a nullity. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present day, the judge in municipal court is acting as an administrative officer, not in a judicial capacity. Courts administering and enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely acts as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not in a discretionary capacity. The judge is doing what he's told. He's a bought and paid for clerk. Is there any time, can anybody think of any time when a judge has not acted in compliance with some statute? Of course not. They always follow some statute. It's always, you're being charged under some statute. You see what I'm saying? They're bought and paid for clerks. There's no such thing as a court. It's the accepted rule not only in state courts but of the federal courts as well that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes as a bought and paid for clerk. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature and otherwise, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. They're bought and paid for. It's not a court. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. They don't do anything that's valid. A capias, a bench warrant, I don't care what it is. It's not valid. Where there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. Bar grieve the bastard. I'm telling you, the Supreme Court knows the law, and when you start bringing up the felonies they're involved in, you know, and then what happens is those things get sent to the lawyer, and he has to answer to the Supreme Court. That's why I do my paperwork. I file a notice of void judgment, because once it gets filed into that case and has that court file stamp on it, that lawyer can't claim stupidity. He knows exactly what he's doing. That's great evidence. You attach it to the bar grievance. But in fact and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in the state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. That's a summary from United States versus United Mine Workers, U.S. Supreme Court, because I can't imagine the Supreme Court saying the so-called 14th Amendment. You know what I mean? This is the current Article 13 and Amendment. Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall except as punishment for crime. So they impose martial law, and they make up a bunch of fraudulent, fictitious crimes, and then they put on their show trial in their kangaroo court with their bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge and sell you into slavery. That's exactly what's going on today, folks. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. Exactly. Exactly. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. This is satanic. It's diabolically evil. And the first order of business is to impose a military dictatorship somehow, because they got to get rid of their nasty little common law problem. Because they get their necks stretched at common law. Don't get me going. You're going to get me going here. So the way I deal with it is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. There has to be an act of the legislature ceding that land to the federal government. And I can tell you in Texas, and there's big, huge military bases, all sorts of military bases in Texas. Fort Hood, there's Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio. There used to be 4 military bases in San Antonio. They shut some of them down. There's Lackland Air Force Base, a training base. There's bases all over the place. Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls. There's Air Force One, Air Force Plant 4 in Fort Worth, where they manufacture the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. I mean, they're all over the place. And there's not one act of the legislature in Texas. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally, that's military dictatorship, folks, covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. That's U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. International law rule. Again, it comes down to, and I should have put that in here, there's a case that says that under public international law, the states are foreign to each other. Under private international law, they're not. Anyways, international law, adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction, federalizes state civil law, including public law or common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory but the common law of a state, the state and federal venue discussed. The civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are a federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state law. So I don't care if it's a state law, it's actually a federal law. And a cause arising under such laws may be brought in and removed to federal district court under sections 1331 and 1441 of 28 U.S.C. And that's taken from Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President, June 1957. That would have been Eisenhower, wouldn't it, in 1957? I can't remember. But anyways, pages 158 to 165. Color means an appearance, a semblance, a simulacrum, as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie, or apparent right. Hence a deceptive appearance. It's a lie. A plausible assumed exterior concealing a lack of reality, a disguise, or a pretext. Colorable, that which is in appearance only and not in reality what it purports to be. Gee, that sounds like all these federal codes, even the state codes. Hence counterfeit, feigned, having the appearance of truth. Color of law means the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right, misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law and made possible only because wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state as action taken under color of law. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. Again, forced loans, that means negotiable instruments, right? Negotiable instruments falls under Unidroit. Unidroit didn't exist then, but it's still international law. It's a struggle for national supremacy. So, again, the federal, it's not the federal government in that case, it's the national government. So then the national government is supreme, and that means that any state that gets mixed up in a contract winds up having it supreme over them, which, why, think about it. The New Jersey legislature is set up pursuant to Title IV, United States Code. All the legislatures are set up pursuant to Title IV, United States Code. They follow the Code of Federal Regulations. They follow federal statutes. There's court cases that say that they have to follow federal statutes. So then they're territorial, by definition. Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land.
6-2.
That's what I said. And the judges of every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. In other words, it doesn't matter what is in any state constitution or laws. Article 9, an amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And so, at common law, we have unlimited rights. It's only under martial law that they have to define everything. At common law, rights are unlimited. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statutes are required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people. As a general rule, men have the natural right to do anything which their inclinations may suggest, if it be not evil in itself, and in no way impairs the rights of others. Liber Code, or General Orders 100, Article 1. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. Article 2. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. And I can tell you that, like for example the southern states, the Civil War, there was no Treaty of Peace. All there was an armistice, ceasefire. That's all that happened with the Civil War. And There's no special proclamation by the Commander-in-Chief. Then I can tell you that as far as the Treaty of Hidalgo, which covers New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, and parts of Colorado, I think. Under that one, there's no specific mention. It has to be a special mention in the Treaty of Peace. So there's nothing in there ending the martial law. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of revenue and taxes. That's why if you're dealing with taxing authorities, they're kind of arbitrary, aren't they? Because it's all martial law. They take it. Whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. Why do you think they're so worried about your safety? A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. And there's the New World slave flag. They want you safe. Got to be safe. That's the New World slave flag. That's evidence of your slavery. There's 3 kinds of martial law. There's full martial law, where a declaration of martial law is issued. Troops are put on the street, used only during wartime, used on a foreign country or actually invaded by a foreign power to put down an armed rebellion. Martial law proper is the law of the armed forces. When a captain tells a private what to do, it's enforced by court-martials. And martial law rule is a law of necessity and emergency, allows the domestic use of martial law powers. It's used during peace times, and it can continue for centuries during a military occupation. And that's taken from the U.S. Supreme Court in Ex parte Milligan. It's cited in non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellen to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. Now my book is available. It's about Trump. Is he a true patriot? There's one right there, couple. Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book, and that's why he's on the book, because he babysat me through the process of publishing it. It actually took me about 2 weeks to prepare the manuscript, because I had everything already. It's just a matter of putting it together. And then once the manuscript was ready, then it took us 6 months. So a year ago last January is when he asked me to write the book, and then we got it published last July. So it was about 6 months getting it ready to publish. And so it's about the deep state and who they are and where they came from and how they got there. It talks about the 2 national governments. I do aerospace engineering consulting for work, and so one of the things they always taught me to do is to make sure I support everything I do. And so this book is full of all sorts of court citations, law dictionary definitions, international treaties, all sorts of stuff. As a matter of fact, there's very little, it's my opinion. And that's why I say a true American patriot or not. I basically say read the evidence for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Has anybody heard of Jerome Corsi? Okay, Nelson has. Anybody else? Jerome Corsi was actually indicted in the Mueller investigation for lying. He knows Roger Stone, and he knows of Trump. I think he's even met him. But Roger Stone is close friends with Trump. Anyways, has been for a long time. So what happened is Corsi's got a PhD in political science from Harvard, and he's a real smart guy. He's written a bunch of books. He's got a YouTube channel, a website, all that stuff. Anyways, there's a YouTube video where Jerome Corsi says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him. And they said that there was a group of generals in the Pentagon that were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but maybe you want to go talk to Donald Trump first. 3 months later, he gets a phone call. They decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed to run for president. And so in my opinion, this is my opinion, I've seen the video, but this is my opinion, is that the entire 4 years of the Trump presidency and even what's going now is a giant military psyop. Did you know there's a war college in the Pentagon? Yeah, there is. They study warfare. There's a war college. It's called the War College. Matter of fact, if you look on any officer's resume in the military, they'll always have something about the War College. And they study warfare. And what's the most important part of any warfare? It is, how does an inferior force overcome a superior force? And so that's called psychological operations. And so I think that it's all been a giant military psyop. Have you ever heard of Howard Hughes? You remember Howard Hughes?
Mm-hmm.
Remember how he was hiding out all the time?
Yeah.
I think, again, this is my opinion, I think that all billionaires, when they get to be billionaires, they get approached by the New World Order crowd and they get told you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. And I think Howard Hughes didn't want to go along with their program and he was hiding out all the time. He was afraid of being poisoned. He was careful about who he surrounded himself with, all sorts of stuff. And I think that's what Howard Hughes, and I think Trump, the same thing happened with him. I do have a little bit of evidence. One, the evidence that I have is there was a 1984 helicopter crash where 3 of his executives got killed, and he had canceled out at the last minute. And I do aerospace engineering consulting, and I happen to know a little bit about helicopters, and I know that they crash for a lot of reasons, but not for the blades coming off. Okay, and that's what happened in that crash. And they might have a tail rotor dry shaft bearing that seizes up, and then the tail rotor dry shaft seizes, and then there's no tail rotor, and they start spinning, and then they auger in. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why helicopters crash. I've never heard of a helicopter crashing because the blades came off. And so anyways, I think that Trump knows exactly who the enemy is, and that's why they hate his guts so much. You know? And they're just doing anything they can to get rid of him. And so anyways, that's my opinion. And so that's the book was published in July, so everything after July, you know, there's nothing in it because I didn't have all that information of everything that's happened since then. But I can tell you that I saw a meme where it said, well, you heard what Penny Kelly had to say about Trump too, but I saw a meme where one of the generals, who's in charge of the in charge of the National Guard, anyways, there was a general going to and this was like in March, okay? There was a general going to the Florida White House to see Trump. And I think, again, this is my opinion, I think that when Biden tripped on those steps going up to Air Force One, I think that, well, you saw what Jean-Claude said about the White House. The grass is overgrown. You know, I think it's empty. And I think that Biden is basically on a movie set. I think that the going up the steps to Air Force One was a movie set, and the steps were screwed up. You know what I mean? And so he tripped because they weren't what he was expecting them to be. You know, they do stupid things. You know what I mean? And so that's my opinion. So anyways, the back of the book, I think it says it so well. I didn't write the back of the book, but I think it really speaks volumes. It says, read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the Satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. And then the last thing it says, does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? And Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. I think that says it all. Anyways, the other book is Mike Blackwell's book. You could consider Mike Blackwell's book kind of a primer. It warms you up. He's a Vietnam veteran, so the first chapter is about his experience in Vietnam. He volunteered to go to Vietnam, and they sent him to Germany. And he said, well, I don't want to go to Germany, I want to go to Vietnam. And he had to twist their arm to get him to send him to Vietnam. And then when he got to Vietnam, they put him on the, behind the line somewhere. And he says, I want to go to the front lines. He was special forces in Vietnam, eh? And he was trained to be special forces. And so he had to twist their arm, and they told him that your chances of not making it out of there are like about 80%. And he said, sign me up. and so anyways, he survived it all. And so he has his first chapters about Vietnam, and then he goes into, so you consider his book kind of a primer for my book, and then my book goes into the nitty-gritty details. Anyways, you can order my book from Amazon.com or my website. It's $30 plus shipping. I prefer you order my book, my website, and I'll autograph it for you. Amazon does not provide autographs. I make more money if you buy it off my website. If you want the book autographed, order the book my website, but don't forget to tell me if you have something special you want the autograph to say. Tell me what you want it to say. Do you want to know the origins of the deep state and who's behind it? We talk about that in our videos. Matter of fact, we might talk about that in this video. You want to know why it's called the Trump administration? There's a reason, for sure. Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? We just talked about that, actually. Do you want to know who owns Congress? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. I believe. If not, we've talked about it in other videos. I think we're going to talk about it in a little bit. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Well, think about it. They're enforcing the martial law. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's the same thing that is happening now. Exactly the same thing. Do you want to know how every president, or why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? Yeah, that's food for thought. Anyways,
Do we know when that started?
I don't. Probably after 1933, after the bankruptcy. Probably that's when it started. Probably, I'm guessing Roosevelt didn't go to see him, but I think probably every president after that did. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. I wanted to add something in here. I forgot to do it. I was going to. There.
It was after first meeting between a pope and an incumbent U.S. president took place in the aftermath of World War I, January 1919.
Oh, that's interesting.
Benedict XV and Woodrow Wilson.
Wow. Well, Wilson, boy, that doesn't surprise me. Anyways, this is kind of telling. This is pictures of Obama with the pimp, or I meant the Pope. Anyways, they're laughing and chuckling and having a good old time. And he doesn't look too happy with Trump, does he?
I love that photo.
Anyways, martial law is the public law of necessity. Necessity calls it forth. Necessity, remember, martial law rule is the law of necessity and emergency, right? Necessity justifies its exercise. Necessity measures the extent and degree to which it may be employed. That necessity is no formal, artificial, legalistic concept, but an actual and factual one. It is the necessity of taking action to safeguard the state against insurrection, riot, disorder, or public calamity. What constitutes necessity is a question of fact in every case. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. Slaves say, oh yeah, this is emergency, yep, you should do it. And the tyrant says, oh yeah, this is emergency, we got to do this. They orchestrate the whole thing, in my opinion. No state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, or make anything but gold and silver coin, a tender in the payment of debts. There is no lawful money in general circulation and hasn't been since 1965. Money under the private international law called the Uniform Commercial Code, or Texas Business and Commerce Code, which is the Texas version of it. Remember, it all comes from Unidroit, so the only difference is the numbering system. In other words, in Texas it's 1.201B24. In New Jersey it might be 1-201B24. See what I'm saying? Instead of dashes it'll be points, or points or dashes. Anyways, that's the only difference, because it all comes from Unidroit. Party, as distinguished from third party, means a person who is engaged in a transaction or made an agreement. So it's all about business, commerce. Texas Business and Commerce Code. Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction. Remember, we were talking about municipal law, municipal jurisdiction of Congress. But where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, etc., etc., etc. And that's the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. That is a very good book. It's got all sorts of little jewels in it. It's really, it's 150 pages, but it's double spaced, so it's really a quick read. And I have it on my website if you want it. The 14th Amendment is an extension of national military powers presently used in a municipal character. Okay, so remember municipal law. And enforced by municipal laws stretch far beyond their original limitations and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. Remember, we were talking about that earlier today at lunch. Article 1 tribunals. That's why Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 is so powerful, because you're hitting the nail on the head. And that causes a problem for them, because once you have proof, it's bar grievance time and it's judicial complaint time, and they're going to get slapped so many times whether they let you walk or not. I like to grieve them anyways, even if they do what I want them to do. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. Again, that's the same thing that's happening now.
So what was his non-honest money system? King George.
It's the same thing. I mean, the pounds were commercial paper, right? Negotiable instruments. It's the same thing that's going on now. They didn't have lawful money. The United States shall guarantee to every state of this union a republican form of government. That's Article 4, Section 4. A republican form of government is not a military dictatorship. We've already talked about that. The purpose of a republican form of government is to shield we the people from international law. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. And that's Downs versus Bidwell, 1901. And there is Article 1, the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. And if you look in the passport, it just says United States of America. I went and looked in the statutes at large, and the oldest one, Book 1 of the Statutes at Large, which was published in 1848, says United States of America. And so there's good reason to believe that that entity was here for a long time. There was an entity that went bankrupt in 1933. I'm guessing it was that entity. I don't know. But something went bankrupt, and the government changed in a major way when it did. Because, and we'll go into that here in a second. A passport is a written document given to a person or persons by a commander of belligerent forces, authorizing him or them to travel unmolested within the district occupied by his troops. Passports are issued by the State Department or other similar office in other countries to diplomatic agents or others entering or traveling in foreign countries, which are the same general character as those issued during war. The latter should, when practicable, have a photograph of the bearer attached. And this is taken from the Rules of Land Warfare, 1914 edition, Passport, Safe Conduct, Safeguards, and Cartels, Chapter 7, Section 4, Article 276, page 100. And there's a silver certificate. Now, Federal Reserve notes also have the United States of America. This is all block capital letters. And so Nelson thinks that it is a different entity than the one called out in the Articles of Confederation, and he might be right. I think there's good reason to believe that he is right. But this says, this certifies that there is in deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. Now, sorry?
It also says United States note on it instead of Federal Reserve note. So the certificate said that.
Yeah.
United
I think it's, where does it say it though? I'm
I
looking.
don't know, but it is a United States note.
No, that was actually what said that, I've got one. It's over here. I've got it in my briefcase. It's those red ones that issued by Lincoln, or not Lincoln, Kennedy.
No, yeah, that's what I mean.
Those ones, but those are not silver certificates, they're United States notes.
No, but there was a silver certificate as well.
I've never seen that on a
Yeah,
silver
silver
certificate.
certificates say United States note on them. Pull it out and look. Everything else says Federal Reserve notes.
Here's a silver certificate.
It should say United States note on it.
I'm not seeing it, but this does say United States note.
There it is.
That's the $5 bill, though. That's not a silver certificate. That's different.
Well, okay, well this is real. This was the real money then. These are real. These are not
These-
Federal Reserve notes. Where's the
No,
silver
they're not. No,
certificate?
you're right.
So
They're United States notes. That says silver certificate. Where it says United States note on this one, it says silver certificate on that one. See what I'm saying?
Are these things? I could swear it says the United States note on these things.
That Coinage Act is something we could look at in about 3 months after we get through everything else.
Yeah, or maybe about 3 events.
Yeah, what year are we scheduling for the Coinage Act?
Yeah, no joke. Eh? Anyways, this is a land patent, and it does say the United States of America in upper and lower case like it should say it. So, I think that Nelson's right. You know, there's all sorts of entities that they've set up, and which one is doing what and how they're all doing it, who knows. The ones that I know about are the United States of America and United States of America. We know about those. Those are the only ones that I can prove right now. Anyways, at common law, only gold and silver coin were legal tender. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. At best, the absolute best that you can do with the Federal Reserve note, or even a silver certificate, or a United States note, those are negotiable instruments. Okay? The best you can do with those things is discharge debt with limited liability. That's the absolute best that you can do. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. You know,
Do we know what year that was? Oh, 1927. Okay.
these bar member scum lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. Discharge falls under law of nations or international law. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent YouTube videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, Contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin. This is basically so that nobody thinks that I'm taking advantage of the private money system. I prefer gold or silver coin. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money, the military script, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. This is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. Section 15, as used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States, which includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes, and that's found 48 Stat 337, and that's why, again, why Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 is so powerful, because if they want Federal Reserve notes, then Federal Reserve notes are meant for internal use of the government only. So that means that they're federal. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. A requirement for a promissory note is a promise to pay. Gold certificates, silver certificates were promissory notes, but you can never pay a debt with a Federal Reserve note. The best.
Wasn't a promissory note doesn't a promissory note have to have a distinct moment upon redemption?
No.
Something does.
That would be,
I thought it was
Promissory note might
because
be.
The
Might
gold
be.
certificate was payable on demand.
Might be.
That was the time.
Right.
So I
It
think
might.
that
It might.
needs a little clarification.
But the bottom line is, and there's court cases that talk about it, is that an unconditional promise to pay is itself money. And so the promissory note is itself money. And the courts have said that it doesn't matter that it says you're going to pay. It is itself money. There's actually a Supreme Court of Canada case that talks about that.
is that why you make a promissory note if you don't, I mean, it's like if you have lottery winnings and it originally is meant to pay out over time and you don't want to wait, you can actually take that to a third party, and they'll give you like maybe a smaller value, but pay it to you right away.
No.
No, that's not.
If they do, they're ripping you off big time.
Well, not if you agree to it, not if you want
I
the
suppose.
money right on head.
If you accept it, yeah.
But that's a promissory note in a way, isn't it? They're promising to pay you over time.
Well, they're giving you one form of commercial paper with another form of commercial paper.
Well, true. Yeah, I understand, but I'm okay. All right.
Could I read the promissory note definition from
Go ahead.
Oxford Dictionary today? So I'm not going into the law dictionary at the moment. A signed document containing a written promise to pay a stated sum to a specified person or the bearer at a specified date or on demand.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
A signed document. There's always a signature on those Federal Reserve notes.
Right. Right.
A written promise to pay.
Yep. Okay, check out my other videos: Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 7, do-it-yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts, Canada Border Pigs playlist, and bar members and their Satanic Connections playlist. This is General Orders 100, Article 37. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans, to billet soldiers, or to appropriate property, especially houses, land, boats, or ships, and churches for temporary and military uses. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Cryptocurrency is anything can be used as a means of exchange as long as we agree to it. It's called barter. Gold and silver coin is exchanging one thing of value for something else of equal value, which is barter, really. My contact information is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. I haven't been there in months, so Facebook is a has-been. My private group at Facebook called Sovereignty International, it would be getting deleted if I was there, but I'm not just going to delete it. I want to ban everybody off it and eliminate it, because that's how Facebook makes their money, and I want to eliminate that. Anyways, if I ever go there, but if there's like 17,000 people, it takes time to ban all 17,000 people off there. That'd take me probably a couple of weeks of solid deleting. Anyways, I have Yahoo deleted their private groups, so migrated all of that over to free lists, and it's called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. I have a Google private group also called Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I also have a profile on Library. All my videos are on Library. I also have one on Patreon, Sovereignty International, and I have a MeWe group. Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the founders intended, for the purpose of enslaving everybody. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. And again, if you think about it, it was state citizens, we the people are state citizens, that wrote the Constitution. That's Colgate versus Harvey, U.S. Supreme Court. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states, in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Every taxpayer is assessed a trust, having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's a summary of Henry Boland's. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born in the throes of armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to determine his federal tax liability. So again, you don't want to be a U.S. citizen, do you? D.C. Code 1901, which was basically at the same time period when Downs versus Bidwell got ruled on by the Supreme Court. Anyways, an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia. You can now call that United States Code. The legal estate to be the Sister use. That's located at 31 Stat 1432. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but the nominal feoffees who to the use of the religious houses. That's the Roman cult, folks, so they're getting to use it. Thus distinguishing between the possession and the use and receiving the actual profit, while the season of the land remained in the nominal feoffee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks, to be bound in conscience to account to assess a use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's called taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. In those old law dictionaries, some of them the pages are numbered and some of them are not, and that one is not numbered. And it's codified at 15 USC section 44. A corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And then it goes through the same definition, does not have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And that second part of that definition would be Sestakay Trust. And so the definition's right there. So now the second disinformation I want to address here today is the birth certificate. The birth certificate creates the Sestakay Trust. Many people are getting the birth certificate authenticated by the Secretary of State, thereby claiming to capture the account with the Treasury. Doing this puts you into international law. This is Article 22 of the Convention. The way I look at it is it's a fraud. Okay? If you participate in the fraud, then you can't claim fraud. Article 22 of the Convention concerning the international administration of estates of deceased persons. That's found in the Hague Conference on Private International Law, 2nd of October 1973. You do a Google search and it'll come up no problem. So this Article 22 of that convention. Article 23 of that same convention says any person who has acquired assets of the estate from the holder of a certificate drawn up and where necessary recognized in accordance with this convention shall, unless it is proved that he acted in bad faith, be deemed to have acquired them from a person having power to dispose of them. So, you know, these bar members come, they know about this stuff, and they're sneaking around in the back, stealing the money out of it. That's exactly what's going on. The birth certificate's a fraud. If you participate in the fraud, you cannot claim fraud. If you participate in the fraud, you go into international law. And once you're in international law on any particular issue, you're stuck there. Okay, on that issue, you cannot go back to common law. They don't remember Clearfield doctrine. Once you go in there, you're there. Any fake money in the Sestakay Trust account is in international law. This is actually taken from the New South Wales Attorney General Registry of Births and Deaths and Marriages, and it's a certified copy, as you can see. New South Wales Registry of Births, Deaths and Marriages, Birth Certificate Content Review. This is like about a 20-page document. This is, I think, page 3 or 4. I put it there because I got the highlighted portion and to show that it's certified. And then we'll go in closer right here. It says a birth certificate in the highlighted area is used to establish identity and enable individuals to establish their rights and discharge their obligations in respect of services provided by the government and private sectors. So the people that are doing that, you know, it's entirely possible. But again, if you do that, you're going into international law. And in some circumstances, you might be able to do that. It's all, in any case, it's the evidence that you introduce. If you don't introduce the evidence, then they're not going to, I guarantee you, because it'd be treason for them to do that. You see what I'm saying? You introduce the evidence, then you volunteered. So I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. In certain circumstances, it might be useful. If you know how to, it says government and private sectors. So then you should be able to use it with the banks, should be able to use it with the utility companies, you know, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, the underwriting of the 1933 Banking Act, etc., came from the securitization of either the bodies, the labor, but where did the de jure states lose their land?
They didn't.
Not the title to the land, but the use and the fruit, the use of the fruit of the land. Like, did the banking scam steal the usufruct by some, through the martial law aspect, saying, okay, this land, now that it's hostily taken, then somehow
You're talking, that's all Roman law.
they built the fraud on,
Usufruct is Roman law. So you're talking Roman law. Again, if you went into court, the judge would see that you don't know what you're talking about and walk all over you. You cannot, you're talking, that's Roman law.
so
So-
Boris was using,
He was using Roman law.
okay,
So, again, and the birth certificate. You see what I'm saying? So, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it just because I don't understand it that well. And I like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And that works for me, I can tell you.
It's my point is the posterity, the value of the posterity that was won.
You can have absolute title to your land.
Okay.
And absolute title to your land means you're king on that piece of land. You have to defeat their presumptions. I've got absolute title to land. I know other people that do.
You do have it?
Absolutely.
And are you paying taxes on
No,
that land?
I'm not. They don't even ask.
Okay.
And I have several parcels that are like that.
Okay.
I have several. I've got 10 acres and 20 acres in West Texas. I've got 3 or 4 1-acre parcels and a 5-acre parcel in Arizona. And don't hear a peep out of them. One of them, I had to sue them and took them to the 9th Circuit. But the bottom line is they don't ask. And I lost my case in the 9th Circuit, but they went away and I haven't heard a peep out of them since. So I won. They just don't want to tell you that. It's the same thing that happened with this friend of mine in Arizona. I forwarded that text that he sent me? Let me find it. Because it's what happens. This is what they do. They're never going to admit that you're right. Okay? If they did, they would be admitting to treason, sedition, all sorts of stuff. So they can't. But this is what happened. Let me find his text. He sent me a text. Right here. He says, you'll appreciate this. He was in a divorce case. Okay? If there's anything that's admiralty, it's divorce. Okay? It was a divorce case. Matter of fact, the divorce was already decided. His wife was coming back wanting more child support. He's got some money stashed away. I don't know how much, but he had some stock. I don't know how much it's worth. Could be millions. I don't know. But I helped him set up some trusts, and he went and, I don't know what he did, but anyways, he made himself a pauper by doing it. Anyways, he says, you'll appreciate this. I received the orders from my trial. The judge made negative remarks about my flawed sovereign man arguments, yet gave me everything I asked for. It's like the cops and their warning, right? Gave me everything I asked for. Any novice attorney reading the orders would guess I got slammed. I felt very empowered with the outcome, and thank you for the lessons I learned from you. Thank you. P.S. I'm in Mexico right now, Playa del Carmen. I'm paying less to rent a beachfront hotel here than I was for my house in Scottsdale. He was renting a house in Scottsdale. Scottsdale's a nice area in Phoenix. Things are so relaxed here, you wouldn't know there's turbulence anywhere else in the world. The judge said flawed. She didn't say unsuccessful.
Yeah, they're the ones that have the flaw.
That's right. But so they'll never admit that you're right. But it's amazing how things just fall away for you. You see what I'm saying? And it just, that's the way it happens. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2. Is the state of Texas required to follow federal regulations? How about the state of New Jersey? Of course they are. Yes.
Is your New Jersey state land, New Jersey state land, is your state, small s, New Jersey state land? Who held it, who owned it at the time?
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was private, that was private land then, the people would.
Well, the people. So the people of New Jersey would potentially have essentially some sort of right to the land of New Jersey.
What, they happen to have a deed to.
No, I'm saying that the state of, the New Jersey state, there was state lands.
Okay.
There is?
There was.
Or was? Okay, so you're talking, they sold it all. Once they sell it, it's gone.
How do you know they sold it?
Well, I'm not saying they sold it all, but what they don't have now obviously got sold.
Yes, but there, what if there were what if there are state lands, like, well, not Arizona, that wouldn't be fair. Of the original 13 colonies, if there was any land held by the state, de jure New Jersey, de jure Pennsylvania, say 1805, de jure New Jersey land,
Okay.
who holds that and for what purpose?
You know, still don't get what you're getting. If they sold it, whoever wound up as a successor, they're assigned and as an assigned,
Okay, so let's
ended up with the property. If they didn't sell it, then they still own it.
So the state, let's say today, the state of New Jersey de facto says that they own particular a state park or whatever, right? They own parkland.
Okay.
And it's generating revenue of some kind for that de facto corporation.
Okay.
Before the military takeover of 1860, 61, 65, that state park belonged to New Jersey, not the state of New Jersey. So they've come in and now taken, quote, title, unquote, to it. So New Jersey had absolute title. New Jersey state, small s, may have had absolute title. I'm just asking a rhetorical question. Where, for the future, the land, state land, from original de jure. Because it wasn't all private, maybe it was all private, I don't think so.
Well, first of all, I don't know what's going on in New Jersey, but I suspect that maybe it's been bankrupt and
Gone into the creditor's hands?
could have.
Or what if it was the,
If,
did that ever happen
if-
before?
again, all land other than in Texas is administered by the Bureau of Land Management. And so I can tell you that, and I don't know how it was in New Jersey, but I do know in Arizona today, there's a whole bunch of public land.
Yes.
And it's like a checkerboard. There's a section of federal, Bureau of Land land, and there's a section of state land. And another section, and it's like a checkerboard.
I understand that, but I'm familiar with those checkerboards. And I believe the Arizona state land is territorial and it's under DC.
Yes, absolutely. Arizona's territorial,
Correct.
like every other state.
I'm talking even it never became non-territorial because of the fact it was a territory before it didn't become a state till 1905.
Yes, I know. Yeah, so it couldn't have because
Right.
it's only a state
Right.
under the unconstitutional
Exactly.
corporation.
So that's why I'm asking the question rhetorically back to, because I think there's something there as far as the we the people benefit. It's not just what you earn.
I think what it comes down to is we the people individually have to own the land. the corporations or the entities, there's a trust. I don't know if the trust owns land.
Right, the
It
state-
may.
The state land.
I would suspect it doesn't, because I'll bet you the corporation essentially took it, and as with anything, possession's 9/10 of the law, and the trust might have some land. I can tell you that even in Canada, communist Canada, there's courthouses with de jure flags that sit empty all the time. They're always empty. I've never seen anybody in them, and they have them sitting there waiting for the people to come and accept responsibility. So the people have essentially abdicated to this bankrupt corporation. See what I'm saying? And in the U.S. it's a little different. Okay, in Canada it's pure common law, whereas in the U.S. we have the Constitution, so that defines it all. And but the principle would still apply. Is that there could be trust land that's and maybe the state land, if there's like in Arizona, that state land that's owned by the state of Arizona, that could be considered trust land. I don't know.
I believe it is. However, it's still under the DC as opposed to pre-1860. Anything in the 13 colonies and even California, perhaps, when it became a state as a de jure. There was a ton of land that the state owned. Who
Right.
is the state? The state is the people.
Well, it is, but I think if there's a bankruptcy, it gets caught up in it, just like everything else. The only part that wouldn't would be stuff that I own as one of the people that's absolute title.
I understand.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And because the state, it's again, it comes down to the governors and how corrupt they are, because who's going to hold them into account if they do anything? I mean, we're just now, 100 years after the fact, figuring out that there's 2 or 3 entities there or more, and so whatever's done has been done for a long time.
Remember the U.S. federal government had no debt when Andrew Jackson was in, correct? Okay, so that probably meant, now a lot of the states, have any of them ever gone bankrupt before 1860? Maybe that's why they had the rule that they couldn't, they always had to have a balanced budget back.
Who knows? I mean, they've done all sorts of things. Like they went and, from what I'm hearing, is they made all the states act as sureties for the federal debt too.
When was that?
That was, I think, during Roosevelt or something like
Right,
that.
again, you're back into, I'm asking the question de jure wise. Also, I should know, I just happened to read that that Pennsylvania state, small s, was the only colony willing to commit to pay back the French in 1778.
Is that right? I think
No.
you told me that before.
No one else would sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that the land was secured to the French, which is why the post office in Philadelphia to this day is still controlled by the French.
You never know.
Just some comments, that's all.
Yeah.
No
Well, I'm sure
conclusions,
that
I'm
they've
just-
made a good return on their investment.
They still own it,
Yeah.
perhaps, and maybe that's why they still have some form of control over the
Well,
government.
and the French government has, there's a French Revolution too. And there was all sorts of stuff that's gone on in between. But again, there's creditors. There's always creditors. Somebody loaned the French government money, and so someone could have seized that. And they own it, not the French government, some Frenchman.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Just like you're planning on putting a lien against Ocean City if necessary.
I become a creditor, I
And-
understand that.
And if if you do that, then, you know, it may be that you'll see some property, have to see some property, you know, to get satisfied. Who knows? You know? Again, it comes down to, you know, so many different variables. Who's to know what went on way back when? You know? It's really possession's 9/10 of the law, and you have to know the law and how to assert it. You know, really, that's what it comes down to. Anyways, forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military despotism. It makes it so the courts presume that you do not pay a debt. It makes it so everybody is paupers, and paupers have no rights except what they allow you to have. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. Debt is the money of slaves. The single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes. Lawful money is not bank notes. It's not forced loans. It's not discharged debt. And it's not international law. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. This is the front page of my YouTube channel. The subscribe button's already clicked. The bell needs to be clicked. It'll look like it's vibrating after it's clicked. That's what the arrow is pointing at. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. That's 8th Attorney General's opinion, February 3, 1857. That's why they have to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They'd be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. There are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for its disobedience or crimes. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. It's all territorial, it's all DC codes. Under a military dictatorship, there is no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates democracy. And so democracy is mob rule, which means anything goes, because civil law is whatever we decide today. And it could be something different tomorrow.
How could that be in 1845, civil law? If there was no, or have we always been under military dictatorship? Since the founding.
How do you know? Is it civil law in 1845?
Well, I just looked up the word usufruct and it gave a definition under civil law of bouviers, for example. It said civil law. That wasn't Roman civil law, or was it?
I guess it probably was. I'm sure that when you get martial law, everything changes. You know, remember in that non-ratification of the 14th Amendment, he said municipal laws stretch far beyond their original ancient limits. There we go. Right. Ancient limits.
So we did. Okay. All right. Thank you.
A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies. My basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only, and $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I meant an attorney. No, I meant a liar. But I can tell you what I would do and where to find the forms, and what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. That's why we need other people being on point and knowing what to do. And the unlimited consultations is got some qualifications too. Matter of fact, I need to change that. Email consultations, that's what I'll do. And so that doesn't include document review. Otherwise, I'll be glad to email back and forth. Anyways, some of the content is Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training. There's probably about 3 videos on that. Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration, Criminal Complaint Training. There's probably about 3 videos on that, and there'll be more. Lawsuit Training, other training requests. There's also Northeast Private Information Share videos. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. All exclusive content is available on my website or on Patreon, and you can buy a subscription to the website stuff on my website. So they've been telling people for years that we're in a democracy. Do you think that's an accident? Of course it's not. Whereas taxation by the Parliament, look at this is one thing that gets me. This is George III, Chapter 12, 1778, 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman. That from an act after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment whatever payable in any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or West Indies, except only such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. It's like closing the barn door after the horses get out, right? Taxes caused the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. You're forced to work for them for nothing. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. I think I'll delete that one. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. And that's McCullough versus Maryland, U.S. Supreme Court, 1819. If you are taxed, you are a slave. You are owned, you are property. Article 4, Section 2. There are 2 ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword, the other is by debt. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. That's Article 6, Clause 2. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Tyranny is defined as that which is legal for the government but illegal for the citizens. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. And they're arms. They're not firearms, they're not guns, they're not weapons, they're arms. This Constitution, or the Constitution, is not a document for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. All executive orders or regulations for property, slaves of the government, and therefore a color of law. Color of law is something that looks like law but isn't. It's a felony to violate your rights under the color of law. They can violate your rights as long as they claim good faith. That's why I just go for the bar member. Just file a grievance against them, and they get 3 bar grievances, and I've heard they lose their, I haven't got any evidence, I would like to get some, but they lose their bond. Tell them it's a felony and have witnesses.
Take that mandate.
Yeah, that's right. America needs God. Sheriff, you agree. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Exodus 20:3. The New World Order will require that you worship government. That's going on in China right now with the Falun Gong. They're doing their organ harvesting programs. It's exactly what's going on. Those people are harmless. They just like doing their moves. They have, it's kind of like yoga, I think, is what they are involved in. And they're completely harmless, but the government of China is attacking them and doing all sorts of stuff.
Meditation and movement.
That's right, yeah. It's the duty of the patriot to protect his country from its government. It's all about territorialism for U.S. citizens. Every state is a territory. They are still limited by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and Article 6, Clause 2. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to exercise exclusive jurisdiction in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by cession of particular states in the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government, and exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they are deemed to know the law. That's why you go after the bar member. They're officers of the court. They got nothing to say.
Or they have no immunity when violating a constitutional right.
That's right. Well, it's always constitutional rights. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret warfare with the rights of mankind. And this is disinformation 3. Are you entitled to constitutional protections? No private person has a right to complain by suit in court on the grounds of a breach of the United States Constitution, for though the Constitution is a compact, he is not a party to it. And that's Paddleford, Fay and Company versus Mayor and Alderman of the city of Savannah. And this case is between corporations. Are you a person? And the Constitution, this is the preamble for the Constitution of the United States of America. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promoting the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And so, who is we the people? We the people is not U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens didn't exist when the Constitution was written. And U.S. citizens didn't exist when the Articles of Confederation was written. There was no U.S. citizens at that point in time. They were all state citizens. So we the people is state citizens. Citizens of New Jersey, or citizens of Texas, or citizens of North Carolina, South Carolina. That's we the people. The Articles of Confederation is a compact between the states, but we the people are the states. The Constitution of the United States of America is a compact between the states, but we the people are the states. This is the definitive Treaty of Peace of 1783, and this is kind of small. But if you read Article 1, it says, His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States, and then VIZ in other words, and it lists the states. New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland. It lists all the states. And then it says to be free, sovereign, independent states, that he treats them with such, and for himself, his heirs and successors, relinquishes all claims to the government, property, and territorial rights to the same, and every part thereof. Notice he says territorial. And he adds that in after. This is taken from the Law of Nations, Book 1, Chapter 1, Section 1, by Vattel, 1758. A nation or a state is, as has been said at the beginning of this work, a body politic or a society of men uniting together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by their combined strength. From the very design that induces a number of men to form a society which has its common interests and which is to act in concert, it is necessary that there should be established a public authority to order and direct what is to be done by each in relation to the end of the association. This political authority is the sovereignty, and he or they who are invested with it are the sovereign. Section 2, Book 1, Chapter 1, Section 2, by Vattel, Law of Nations. It is evident that by the very act of the civil and political association, each citizen subjects himself to the authority of the entire body in everything that relates to the common welfare. The authority of all over each member, therefore, essentially belongs to the body politic or state, but the exercise of that authority may be placed in different hands according as the society may have ordained. Okay? So that's where it comes into a federal government or representatives. That's very similar, we the people. That goes back to posse comitatus. The power or force of the county. The entire population of a county above the age of 15, which a sheriff may summon to his assistance in certain cases, as to aid him in keeping the peace and pursuing and arresting felons. That's posse comitatus. That's common law. That's no different than what this is saying. Section 3, Law of Nations, Book 1, Chapter 1, by Vattel. If the body of a nation keep in its own hands the empire or the right to command, it is a popular government, a democracy. If it entrust it to a certain number of citizens, to a senate, it establishes an aristocratic republic. Finally, if it confide the government to a single person, the state becomes a monarch. These three kinds of government may be variously combined and modified. We shall not here enter into the particulars. This subject belonging to the public universal law, for the object of the present work, it is sufficient to establish the general principles necessary for the decision of those disputes that may arise between nations. So, there's a lot of different variations. That's what he's saying. Chapter 10, or Section 10. Law of Nations, Book 1, Chapter 1, by Vattel. Finally, several sovereign and independent states may unite themselves together by a perpetual confederacy, without ceasing to be each individually a perfect state. They will together constitute a federal republic. Their joint deliberations will not impair the sovereignty of each member, though they may, in certain respects, put some restraint on the exercise of it in virtue of voluntary engagements. A person does not cease to be free and independent when he is obliged to fulfill engagements which he has voluntarily contracted. Such were formerly the cities of Greece, such are at present the 7 united provinces of the Netherlands, and such the members of the Helvetic body. So this is talking about a federal republic. We the people are state citizens under common law who have delegated limited authority to the federal government through our representatives. United States citizens are subjects of the federal government. Are you one of we the people? Can you prove it? But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government, and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. We the people. The government has delegated authority only. If you want to be one of we the people, you cannot go into international law. Once you go into international law in any matter, you cannot claim you are sovereign ever in that matter. If you do, these so-called judges will see it and see that you do not know what you're talking about. They may just railroad you and let you deal with it. They may say you're crazy. They will certainly ignore what you're saying. But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. You of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and a father of it. Bar members are liars, thieves, and murderers. Bar members know exactly what they're doing. This is Albert Pike, Grand Master of the Freemasons, and he was also a Confederate general. The apocalypse is, to those who receive the 19th degree, the apotheosis of the sublime faith which aspires to God alone and despises all the pomps and works of Lucifer. Lucifer the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Doubt it not, for traditions are full of divine revelations and inspirations, and inspiration is not of one age nor one creed. Plato and Philo also were inspired, and that's in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, page 322. And if you read that Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike was basically, he says that the Masons are worshippers of Lucifer. And that's the Roman cult. There's actually a YouTube video where the Roman cult is saying it's an Easter vigil and they're praying to Lucifer. So anyways, that's the end of this presentation, and the important thing is this case Paddleford has nothing to do with we the people. It's between corporations, and of course corporations wouldn't be parties to any constitution, but we the people are. Yes.
How they've drawn the people into it is by suckering us into accepting a corporate version of our name in the all caps. So in a roundabout way, they have brought us in under it inadvertently.
Well, that's true,
By
but that's
accepting
treason.
that
That's
well,
treason,
that's true.
and it's fraudulent.
True.
But if you participate in the fraud in the birth certificate, you have to be very careful when you're doing that, and you cannot speak out of both sides of your mouth. You cannot be doing that stuff and talking sovereignty, because you're not sovereign if you're bringing that issue of the birth certificate up, other than saying that it's a fraud and a nullity. And if you do, then you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, and so you have to be very careful when you're doing that. That's why I like to do Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. It's one page, it's short and sweet. It's hard to speak out of both sides of your mouth in one page. Yes?
What would your opinion be of, as we were speaking earlier about claiming, if you're in a court case and you basically bring up the whole thing about the illegal operation of a trust in a name that resembles
there's nothing wrong with that, because you're saying it's a fraud.
Okay, now how about when you go one step further and say, well, I claim to be beneficiary of this illegal trust, and
That would be a problem.
Okay, you're stepping over the bounds.
That's right. Yeah, and again, if you're going to do that, you got to understand what you're doing and understand any possible thing that can happen, and you might get away with it. And everything, the way they look at it is just one case, and they just look focused on the issue that's before them, and they don't look at the whole picture, and it's all based on evidence that you introduce. That's why I just assume do it the way that I do it. I don't bring that stuff up. If people figure out, you got to understand that you're dealing with thieves. These people are thieves. They're perjuring their oath. That's why they'll never admit it, because if they did, they would be admitting to multiple felonies. And so you can't, if you go in there, you're giving them exactly what they want. And so, what?
Or you're saying don't even go into an administrative court if you can help?
I do everything I can to make sure I don't. I handle it all by paperwork, with my nasty grams, if it gets to be a nasty gram, or use the Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. I'll go in there to talk to the clerk to file documents in there, no problem, because the clerks are, they're just idiots anyways, and they don't know what's going on, and it's the judge and the lawyer that know what's going on. That's why I file the bar grievances, because it goes directly to who's responsible and has oversight authority over those bar members. I'll be back in just a second. It's one thing about that T, in one and in out the other,
Then Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
I would say 1/8/17, that's how I just start remembering it.
1/8.
Just like the whole thing with the silver and gold coin, I say 110-1. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. You'll find it right there. And just like the supremacy clause, Article 6, Section 2, 6-2. Yeah, just start remembering by the numbers and you'll start grasping it. Of course, then too, if you understand something about numerology with the Illuminati, it'll help tie you in because they always associate this stuff with their numbers. Are you familiar with their numbers? What are their numbers?
With the 666 and 333 or something?
Well, those are biblical. That's Mark of the Beast and the fallen angels. But 3, 13, and 33, are you guys familiar with those? Okay.
I heard the 33.
Okay, well, they're tied together. The number 3, you spin it counterclockwise 45 degrees or 90 degrees, it becomes the letter M. The letter M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. After the French Revolution, the French Masons created the metric system. You get a ruler with the metric system and the English system superimposed on it. Go to 13 inches, look straight across. It'll be exactly 33 centimeters. So 3 equals 13 equals 33. Now, it's hidden all around us. It's hidden in corporate symbols and so forth, like Arby's roast beef. You remember that symbol? You know Arby's roast beef?
Doesn't it have a hat or something?
Exactly. The lid is a 1, the crown is a 3. Flip it over, it's 13. Burger King, A-B. B is the second letter of the alphabet. K is the 11th. No. B is the second letter of the alphabet. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. 2 plus 11 is 13. How about the Ku Klux Klan? KKK. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. 3 times. Right, and it's also hidden even in, unfortunately, it's hidden in Christianity in a way. How many days was Christ in the tomb before he arose? 3. How old was he when he was crucified? 33. How many disciples did he have? He had 12. Plus himself makes 13.
But some say that the Masons copied to try to supersede the truth, like their fraud aspect.
Well,
The celebrities, a lot of them are 9 or 33.
well, you all see the 3, 13, and 30. Well, that's the all-seeing eye. That's just like on the dollar bill at the tip of the all-seeing eye. And that's also hidden in Horus or Horizon, where he is risen. I mean, they hide it all through everything. I mean, 13 colonies to start the United States of America. Now, how many states fought on the South Side in the Civil War? 11. How many stars on the Confederate flag? 13. I mean, we could go on and on, but who's going to continue to take care of it? But you can do more study on this. You go to Ralph Epperson, America's Secret Destiny.
Say it again?
Ralph Epperson, E-P-P-E-R-S-O-N, America's Secret Destiny. You need to watch that. And another one I recommend is called Empire of the City or The Power of the Ring. I forget exactly what it is, but you want to go to Google it. I think it's Empire of the City. It shows where the 3 city-states that basically control the world. The Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C. Because you see, Vatican is not part of Rome nor part of Italy. And there's a city of London located within the London that you're thinking of that is not part of London or England. And in actuality, Washington D.C. is its own separate city-state. And it has its own flag that most people don't even know about. It's a flag with 3 stars signifying that it's part of the 3
Right.
states.
Right, that's true.
And here's how it works. Each state, city-state plays its part in control of the world. The Vatican controls the mind of the spirit. That's sort of like through religion. London controls the
Finance.
You're right. The
And
material wealth. And Washington, D.C. is the enforcer. The Vatican says, collect your material wealth and send it over here to our bank. If you don't, we're going to send the city of Washington, D.C. to kick your butt. And that's exactly the way it works.
But what happened during this last election, I don't know how many of you were paying attention to this, but what happened was in November or December, I can't remember which one, they discovered that those Dominion voting machines were sending signals via satellite through an Italian satellite overseas, and that the Italian satellite was leased to the Roman cult. And so I think, again, I don't have any proof, but there's lots of evidence of it. I mean, when you see the fact that the lawn is overgrown and everything, DC is completely different than it used to be. I think that because of Trump's executive order in 2018 about foreign interference in our election, I think they seized DC back. DC was owned by the Vatican, but I don't think it is anymore. And that's why the troops were there. Remember that National Guard commander said we're here for a smooth transition of military power, from Vatican to United States military. And that's why the National Guard were there, the fences are there. That's why the White House is empty. I've heard that they picked a new capital in Missouri. And so, wow, that's what I've heard, near Kansas City. And so, I don't know. I mean, a lot of this is rumors, but I do know it was on the news that when they discovered that it was those satellite transmissions happened, that there was the Italian government collapsed. There was an Italian defense contractor that heads rolled, and the Italian government collapsed. They had to, what happens in a see, it's different under a parliamentary system. What happens is they have these coalition governments, and so if the prime minister, what they do is they do a vote of non-confidence on the prime minister, and if enough people, a lot of times these prime ministers can have a minority government. In other words, there might be, like in Canada, and the reason I know is because I grew up in Canada, there might be 5 or 6 parties, right? And so the party that wins the election might only win with 10% of the people, but they have more votes than any other single party. You see what I'm saying? So then what happens is it's called a coalition government. So they have to get people from other parties to help support them so they can pass their legislation. So they have to get more than half to support them. And so then what will happen is they might get a couple other parties to come and help them to participate in the government. So then they'll have to vote other people in these other parties as ministers, and not vote them, just appoint them as ministers, and it's a political thing. And so when that happened, it collapsed. The prime minister, they basically had a vote of non-confidence. The prime minister and so then what happens is they don't hold another election. They might, but they also might just say the couple other minority parties might get together and appoint a prime minister, because the prime minister is appointed by the parliament, and it's the leader of the party that gets the most votes. And so the prime minister, it might not have affected the prime minister, but it could have caused, like some of these other parties, that all of a sudden that they were participating in the government, basically the prime minister might have kicked them out and got the other parties to participate in the government. There's a lot of things that can happen, but they can actually force, if they have a vote of non-confidence in the prime minister, get more than half to vote for the non-confidence, then the prime minister they have to call an election. And I don't think they did that. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I know that there was heads rolling in the Italian government and this defense contractor. I've also heard, I don't know, but I've heard that there was like 260 flights. Jim Willey talks about it. 260 flights that came back. They went to the Vatican and they seized a bunch of gold. And Fort Knox is full. There's a couple other military bases are full. And yeah, so they've seized a bunch of gold. And they went to the Vatican and seized and raided the Vatican. You know, so, you know, I don't know. It's just rumors. A lot of it's rumors. You don't know. But the idea of what happened with the Vatican, this stuff about the Italian government collapsing, I saw that on the news, and the Italian defense contractor, I saw that on the news. That was on Fox. Okay, so you got to figure that, you know, that's well known. The rest of it, you know, there's some of it's rumors and it's hard to say. Anyways, so there's stuff happening that they're not telling everybody about, and that's, again, that goes to the fact that Trump might still be the one that's really pulling the strings, like Penny Kelly was talking about earlier. He might still be the one that's behind the scenes, and Biden, you know, it's like the Truman Show, only now it's called the Biden Show. You know what I mean? Yeah.
When you say that he's on scene, basically, does the reporters all know this? Like when they're going to interview him?
The reporters are all bought and paid for. They're the news media. They're bought and paid for. They're trumpeting the party line. They're demonstrating, you know, that's well known that that's what they're doing. I think when it comes out, well, Cliff High said that in Argentina, he said in history, the news media was like this in Argentina. And the people went to the news media buildings and spent 2 or 3 days. They broke into the building, like thousands of them. And so there's no way they could stop them. They broke into the building, they destroyed everything in sight. And to the point that the building turned into a pile of rubble. And they spent like a week afterwards going through the rubble, making sure everything was destroyed. And that's what happened in Argentina. He said, you might see that today. He says, for sure, he says his data sets show that they're going to have to hire bodyguards. They're going to be getting assaulted. People like that CNN guy. I don't even listen to CNN anymore, so I don't even know their names anymore. Some of these CNN anchors that you hear, Wolf Blitzer or something, they're gonna be out in public and they're gonna get assaulted, and it won't be just one or two. It won't be isolated incidences. They're gonna have to hire bodyguards, and the CEOs of these corporations, they're gonna have to start hiring bodyguards, and yeah, probably Fauci too, you know, and they're not gonna be safe by themselves walking down the street, and you know, people will come out of the woodwork, and you know, it'll be you know, good. You know, it's kind of sad that it gets to that, but you know, if that's what has to happen, then that's what has to happen. You know, Bill Gates is certainly not going to be safe. He's already been, he was at some public meeting and somebody come up with a pie and threw it in his face. I saw the YouTube video of that one, but you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's a Chinese curse that says, may you live in interesting times, you know, and we definitely live in interesting times. There are some people that have questions on the chat here. How do you deal with the birth certificate issue? My attitude is that it's a fraud and a nullity, and that's really all it is. The Roman cult Sestake Trust, the only thing I say about that is I point out that it exists, and they're assaulting me with it. And then some other guy says, but I always call it theirs. It's theirs. It's a fraud and a nullity. Is filing a bar grievance similar in Canada? Yes, it is actually very similar. I've been finding, although I'm not sure, like here in the U.S., the state Supreme Court regulates the bar. I don't know in Canada who regulates the bar other than the provincial legislatures, but beyond that I don't know. And but I can tell you in the U.S. the state Supreme Court regulates the bars, and so I don't know in Canada other than I know that the legislatures pass statutes for the bar, and they basically the bar is in Canada. The bar will make recommendations to the legislature for legislation, and they pretty well just rubber stamp it all. So beyond that I don't know. And I'm gonna file some bar grievances in Canada though, because I got some lawyers that I want to go after. But other than that, that's about all I can say. I guess we might as well. Says here, if you were pregnant right now, what would you do? If I was pregnant, well, first of all, I'm a guy, so I'll never ever know what it's like to be pregnant, quite frankly. But having said that, I haven't looked at some of the other ones that gave advice as far as this these V things that they're trying to make you do, and it depends on which country you're in. There's no way that I would be taking any vaccines. You cannot cancel a birth certificate. It's not yours. It belongs to the state. As far as the pregnant, my wife had a brilliant idea, and it neutered them every time in Georgia. Okay. Well, fortunately, you're in Georgia. You're not in communist Canada, at least. Yeah, my wife had a brilliant idea for vaccinations, and she would say, no problem, you can give our kids a vaccination, but I need you to sign this form saying you accept liability for any negative reactions that would happen. And what they do is they all of a sudden come up with an opt-out form every time. As far as you don't want a baby to be part of the system, then midwife is the answer to that. Don't have it in a hospital. Every state that I know about has laws for midwives, and so find a midwife and have it at home. And actually, my wife preferred having babies at home, because until she got older, after 40s, then she was our last son she had in the hospital because she was older and she was concerned about anything that might happen. But having them at home she preferred it because she preferred having them at home because they didn't have to worry about the doctor slipping her stuff. A lot of times, you find out after the fact that they gave you Pitocin or who knows what. And so she didn't have to worry about anything like that happening. And there was always a doctor that was as a backup. Any of these midwives will always have a hospital and a doctor as a backup. And you'll go and see the doctor and meet him and all that stuff. And so it's not like you're completely on your own. And at some point, the midwife even told my wife that if there's anything happens, it's not going to be my wife's choice, that she's going to call the ambulance and she's going to the hospital. And so, but if you don't have it in the hospital, and they'll come and they'll fill out the form. The midwife will actually fill out the form for you, but you'll have to take it or send it in to get it registered. And that's when what I would do, quite frankly, is I would make an affidavit and a notice and declaration of birth, and record it in the county and use that registration form as evidence and attach it to the affidavit and register that in the county, and then it's not registered with the state. You record it with the county, I should say, and it looks like you have a midwife. That's great. And 11 pounds, wow, they're big. That's a big baby. Natural born at home. That's good. That's excellent. So you got it together. You're already doing all the right stuff. Good. And so then you know that they'll give you the form, and you can do with it what you want. I would record it. I went and I used to work for U.S. Airways in Phoenix, and my wife had a baby, and I went and recorded a notice and declaration of birth. They wanted a birth certificate. I recorded a notice and declaration of birth, and I recorded it with the county, and then I took it to the U.S. Airways, and they used that as evidence to put my son on my benefits at U.S. Airways. And so that worked no problem. And so you don't have to have a birth certificate. You do have to have a government document, and the county recorder document. The recorded document is a government document, and they accepted that, no problem. And so, right, well, we all live and learn. We're all in various stages of learning. None of us knows everything, and you know, it's one step at a time. So anyways, that's right. When you know better, you do better. That's right. It's one step at a time. Nobody knows everything. So, and my brother likes to rail on all the brain dead idiots out there, and I don't blame him for railing on them, but I also tell him that we're all given the opportunity to learn in our own time, in our own way, and we have to give other people the same opportunity, and we hope that they don't pay the ultimate price before they learn. That's all you can do. Thank you for participating. I guess we're about done here. Any more questions here while we're here? Or should we wrap it up? It's 5 o'clock Eastern time, so we could probably go get something to eat. And Nelson's back there sleeping, I guess, eh?
I'm not sleeping.
Okay. Relaxing. But so anyways, so anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. We're going to start at 10 o'clock Eastern tomorrow morning, and we're going to be talking about District of Columbia courts, and then we'll be talking about bar grievances, and anything that you're dealing with, there's always a lawyer that's behind it, and that's the guy that you can hold responsible, and that's the guy that you have to go after. You missed a court date, find out who the lawyer is. Even if you got a public pretender, file a bar grievance against him. File bar grievances against everybody. You can email me. My email was in the presentation. You can, here, I'll even text it. I wouldn't put them on health. Well, you can put them on health insurance, I suppose, if you have company benefits. But at any rate, I wouldn't, again, at least with health insurance when I was doing it, I didn't give them a social security number. I don't know how stupid they become, but you got to realize, I just assume I stay away from these medical doctors. They're not interested in curing anything. At least most of them aren't. Some of them are, obviously, but many of them are not. And so I just generally stay away from them, and I use alternative remedies, and I would encourage anybody to do the same. It's the only way to go, and alternative remedies are far more effective, and you'll be glad in the long run, in my opinion. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Great session.
Okay, Glenn, there was something that we wanted, a statute or something that you had mentioned that we said that we wanted from one another.